Zooming and will be presenting the report.
Thanks, Mary. And if Devin or whoever's running the meeting could share that capital improvement plan slide. Great, thank you. So you've got a binder tonight, which has Mira. Thank you, Mira, for putting that together for everybody. That includes the very detailed budget book that has lots of items in it, lots of information that I'm not going to go over tonight, but I will point out what it represents, and then we can follow up in the details as you'd like to at a meeting, and also over the next month, especially for the new members. If you'd like to schedule some time, one or two at a time, perhaps, that we could go over some of these so you can understand some of the philosophy that we've developed over the years in coming up with the capital and how that is going to fit into the operating budget. I'll be happy to do that. I think it would be productive. But if you just go to the next slide, please. So as those of you who've been on the committee know, we kind of group this capital plan into four main areas. So I think in the email, and I think Mira probably put in your budget book is it on the yellow paper, Mira, where you have the big landscape 8.5 or 17 by 11 pages?
Yeah.
That's the 5-year plan. That's really what we're talking about. The rest of the stuff in the budget book is just, information and details that contribute to that. But those yellow pages have those four main categories, and continuing how we've done this in the last several years is most programs are funded as recurring funding programs, and we do that for each and every facility of town is listed on that plan and has recurring money going into it each year. And in the case of facilities, it's funded solely by free cash. We also have equipment replacement programs. That's the departmental equipment, and what that equipment is and what it is that's being replaced and is subject to that replacement plan is part of the detail that's in the budget book. So again, every department gets an annual amount to replace the eligible equipment for that replacement plan. It's basic operating equipment that is needed on a periodic basis to be replacing things as they become obsolete, therefore staying ahead of the curve and not needing large individual requests in any particular year. And the same with our fleet vehicles. So police cruisers and regular half-ton, three-quarter-ton pickup trucks for the Department of Public Works, for example, are common things that need to be replaced. Every year, there's at least one, if not two, that need to be replaced. So we give a constant stream and level amount of funding every year to make sure that those things can fit within the replacement program. And both the fleet and the equipment replacement programs are funded from our tax levy. We had $400,000 override several years ago to ensure that money would be available to the capital plan for those items. And then kind of the fourth area, which doesn't have any regular funding associated, they're not necessarily regular projects, is townwide infrastructure. And so that'd be any road work, utilities, stormwater, and natural resource type projects. And of course, the big thing that we're probably going to talk about entirely separately from almost everything is because of the magnitude, is we do have a placeholder of $160 million for wastewater that we need to start talking about, and I'll be working with Jackie in the next week or two to kind of formalize what that looks like. But that aside, this capital improvement plan is pretty routine with only a handful of items that are not part of the recurring replacement programs. So if you were to look down under departmental equipment, under the police department, you'll see they have, I think it's in some furnishings that they're looking to have replaced. That's not normally part of the replacement program, so it's an individual item. Under fleet vehicles, there are 2 large DPW vehicles, a tractor and a dump truck, I believe it is, that are not part of the replacement program. Though again, those are individually significant assets that aren't replaced routinely. Those are 10, 15, 20-year assets. In this case, both of those vehicles are over 20 years old at this point, and those are on the plan as not as a recurring replacement program. Can you go to the next slide, please? And so this kind of this slide here just kind of shows that approach. The other thing I want to mention at this slide is the idea of supplemental funding. And you'll see that at the first page of the 5-year plan under our facilities, we have a couple areas where we need some supplemental funding above and beyond the annual recurring maintenance program for buildings. The first is town hall. You'll see $550,000 of supplemental money that we historically or normally wouldn't ask for. But we have just started these replacement programs in the last couple of years, and we haven't had the opportunity to garner sufficient resources, in this case, for a pretty big project that needs to be addressed, and that's the town hall HVAC system. And likewise, the same with the police department. There's a $300,000 supplemental amount for also HVAC systems. In that case, however, we're very likely, or we're hopeful that it's likely that we can get that funded through the Green Communities Grant. But the order of magnitude of the town hall system is Green Communities and subsidies with Cape Light Compact will only address projects up to $300,000. So the town hall system might be an order of magnitude greater than that we can't get grant funding for. But most likely the police department is going to happen, and I'm still not entirely sure that the HVAC work at town hall needs to happen by this summer. So that is a little bit in flux. That timing's to be determined once I kind of find out the availability of some grant funds, and we'll see how that shakes out. So that's what anything you see supplemental funding is basically that we're behind on maintenance. And so the other facility on that first page, that first section, is the COA building. Has projects that are of priority and schedule that need to be addressed sooner rather than later. So we don't have based on the level of funding that's provided each year, is not enough to accumulate the resources to handle those projects before we, in a timely manner. So we ask for supplemental funding in that case. And I'll remind you, I think we spoke to this a couple meetings ago. We talked about, I gave you an update to the engineering study that we had done that looked at all of our town facilities. And so these annual amounts are derived from those engineering reports. And I kind of gone through that methodology at the time. But again, at another date or individually, if you want to come in, we can go through that methodology so I can make sure you understand where it's coming from and how it was derived. But regardless of that engineering study and the amount of funding required to maintain the buildings over a 20-year cycle, I have instituted a new practice where I meet with the DPW director and our facilities manager and identify in conjunction with the department heads what are the actual projects that we're going to be undertaking and how are you going to prioritize those in the short term, 1, 2 to 3 years. So, this annual funding isn't just simply an accumulation of funds. There are actual projects planned for each facility, or most of the facilities, to address the projects that have been identified. And that's in the details of the budget book. If you could go to the next slide.
Rich, while you're doing this, would you mind, this is Kate, would you mind also when you're referring to these line items to just give us quickly the budget line item you're referring to, the number?
Sure. And unfortunately, it's a little bit of a disadvantage being online. I should have mentioned, I apologize. I'm at a conference. And I do have, so actually I do, but I have my other device here, the PDF of the 5-year plan. So the town hall repair and maintenance program are lines 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so normally on line 1, you see that we have an annually recurring amount of $120,000 for the ongoing maintenance and repair town hall. The line below, line 2, shows a supplemental amount of $550, and that's solely because of the HVAC that I mentioned.
Okay, thanks.
And then likewise on the police, line 10, we have the engineering study had an indication of $75,000 was the appropriate amount annually to set aside for maintenance and repair. You see the $300,000 listed there, but I'm relatively confident that that's going to be funded by a grant. So that's why you see the reference GRT right next to it.
Okay.
FC, I should have explained this. references free cash. So these are all the funding sources that are at this point anticipated. And you'll notice that I have almost free cash for almost everything. And that's why I talk about when I do the year-end review, where out of our, we get a pretty good certification of free cash, which is unspent revenues that perhaps that we get, or savings on our departmental budgets. That becomes free cash. And it's important to generate that free cash because that's what then we use to do this capital plan. Absent that money, we'd have to find another way. We'd have to raise taxes to do it, additional taxes, or perhaps we'd have to issue bonds. And kind of the philosophy is here, we're trying to avoid bonding wherever possible because it's very expensive to go out to bond. Every time I go out to bond, between lawyers and financial advisory fees, it's about $120,000. And then on top of it, obviously, you're going to pay the interest. And of course, you got debt service for 5, 10, or 20 years. So it's impactful to borrowing. So this philosophy kind of limits a lot of the borrowing only to the things that we really need to do it for. And that's kind of the reason we do that. But thanks, Kate, for mentioning the lines. I should have brought this up earlier.
Rich, I just have a question. Under the facilities and land, you have a total of $1,665,000. Does that total include the CPA monies and the grant monies, or is it just free cash?
That's the total of everything.
Okay, thank you.
And Mary just mentioned one of the things, and so this is why this is draft, and we got to work some things out. So under line 27, we had some fencing work at recreation facilities that we were contemplating. We thought perhaps it might be a good use of some CPA funds. But as I understand it, maybe the CPC doesn't agree with that. And so we'll work that through, and whatever that result ends up being will be a modification to this before we get to a final plan.
Rich, this is Steve Konachik. I got a quick question on the engineering report that you used. You're using that also for the reoccurring numbers projections?
I used it solely for the reoccurring numbers.
Okay. Did they fall in line with previous 5-year plans, or was there much of a difference?
I'm sorry, say that again.
In your past capital budget projections, were they comparable to what the engineering report's recommending, or did it have much of a change?
It had a change in the past reports that we had. This report was a bit different in the sense that I was hoping it would give us more detail as to specific projects. It didn't necessarily do that. And this is what we talked about a couple months ago when we talked about that engineering study. What it essentially gave us is a theoretical amount based on the various useful lives of the components of buildings, that it would cost X amount of dollars to replace those. So it basically gave us a cost over the next 20 years of what we ought to expect for replacing components that reach the end of their useful life. And then there's a lot of reasons that the number wasn't valid. We had to mark it up for different situations like prevailing wage and being on Cape Cod as opposed to in the middle of the Midwest, using different engineering data. So really what we used that engineering study for was as a reality check of how much we ought to be putting into these replacement accounts each year. And so I feel pretty good about that. But then it's really incumbent on us to make sure the department heads and the facilities department and DPW are all on the same page, that here are the specific projects that we're doing in the next year and maybe the second year, and always have those project lists updated so that you guys have a sense of what we're utilizing the money for. That's not just going into this account and sitting there. And the other thing I want to just re-emphasize, this goes for the facilities repair and maintenance recurring amounts. It goes for the departmental equipment replacement amounts and the fleet replacement amounts. Fleet and equipment are for indicated items only. If there's something that's not indicated that the replacement plan is for, like fire department, it's for, radios and things like that. Police department's for radios and tasers and, things like that. I forget exactly what it's for, but that's what's the detail that's in the budget book. But if we didn't put that's going to be used for something, then it's not allowed to be used out of there. And we have a purchase order process, and we train our town accounting staff on those issues so that they know they don't allow processing bills or payment for things that are not listed as what it's supposed to be for. And when it comes to the building and facilities, it's for repairing and maintaining the facilities as they exist. So if anybody's asking for anything different, like, hey, we need a new extension or an additional office space and we want to add on to something, that's not what this account is for. That's a separate item that we'd bring separately to the finance committee and separately to town meeting to make sure that that's what they want to do. This money is for the facilities as they exist. So those are a couple key points to know about that. So I just wanted to give you a quick walkthrough of what the final product, the budget book, looks like. So pages 3 to 7 is the 5-year plan. Importantly, at the end of that 5-year plan, so I think page 7 is the summary of the totals of how we're going to fund or pay for all these things. And so you'll notice that this year it's over $2 million of free cash needed to fund all these requests. The big one being $550,000 for the town hall if we end up needing to do that. But going forward, we're up about 1.6 million, I think, on average each year over the next several years. So that indicates to me that we need to continue to generate this free cash. We got to continue to have conservative budgeting practices. An alternative, and I think I mentioned this somewhere, maybe on the next slide, instead of using all this free cash and having to rely on that, if we want to get some of these projects done sooner rather than later, I would perhaps could consolidate some of these facilities projects, and perhaps if we're going to do another bonding, because I wouldn't want to do it on its own, but if we're going to do wastewater, for example, and we're going to do bonding anyway, maybe we can roll in some more money for doing a facilities bond, so we don't have to use the free cash and we get more projects done sooner. So that's something I need to evaluate and give you a recommendation to consider before we're finalizing the budget. Pages 9 and 10 it kind of summarizes the capital budget. So when I refer to the capital budget, I'm referring to just those items that are going to be under consideration at town meeting and that you will have to provide a recommendation on in FY26. Because beyond FY26, everything is just kind of conceptual at this point. It's what we think we need, but reserve the right to change our mind if our needs change or if the circumstances dictate. So that's what we're planning on. That's what we're thinking. But what's really going to be coming for a vote and consideration is the capital budget, which is the FY26 requests. And those are summarized on that evaluation page. And you can see it all on that page in a summarized format. And is there a next slide? As part of our recurring fleet replacement program, one of the things I require every department to do is we keep a complete inventory of all the fleet assets. And I ask the departments to update those annually and do a condition assessment to indicate the condition and status of the vehicles. That's on page 19. That's the townwide fleet inventory with the assessments. It's color coded. Red is bad, yellow is bad, and then green's good. We also disclose, and this might be an opportunity as we finalize the budget. We do have some articles that have been unspent from prior years, and so now is an opportunity to use those unspent proceeds or unspent resources and reappropriate them for the current capital plan. And so those are indicated on page 22 and 28. A common question that comes up, other than the wastewater, we're not contemplating any borrowing with this capital plan, but we met over the summer and we talked about projected debt service and our debt balances. And so that presentation and that information is included in the budget book. So if people have to contemplate, their decision-making on what that might mean for the future for debt service, that information's in there on page 30. Page 53 through 58 is the summary of the building repair and maintenance funding requests with the actual projected projects on page 73 through 84 by each facility. And then in that book, we have each department's submission for their capital plan. And if there's anything new or outside of the non-recurring programs, I ask them to complete a capital budget request form. So you'll find some those forms for both in the police department section and the DPW section. DPW for those 2 big trucks that they want, and the police department for the couple of their requests. And then next slide, please. So here's a couple of takeaways from all of that information. We're starting to find that the 400,000 that was allocated from the tax levy, we've had that amount for several years now. With inflation, that's becoming insufficient. And so you'll notice, especially under the police department fleet replacement program, that they have their annual amount, which was the amount originally calculated under that, within that $400,000, but they're asking for supplemental money for their fleet replacement because it's not sufficient with the cost of the vehicles nowadays. As I said earlier, capital plan is highly reliant on free cash. So it's over 2 million for 26, or about 2 million, and about 1.6 million each in the subsequent 5 years. We do consider grants, and you'll see several cases in the plan where there are grants being applied. So for example, the HVAC project for the police department, I'm very confident, or hopeful at least, that the Green Communities program will subsidize that project. The DPW truck is eligible because it does road work, is eligible to be funded through the state Chapter 90 program. So that funding is coming through Chapter 90, not through town taxpayers. And then the NRCS is a Natural Resources Conservation Services Department or something like that. That is going to some natural resource projects in our town landings where we can get that's really used for stormwater projects, and a lot of our town landing is stormwater remediation work. And so NRCS funds are applicable to that. And so you'll see a lot of that money, a little bit less this year. Last year we had a lot of, over $1 million of NRCS funding engineering work at town landings. And I think that's it. I'll wrap it up there and take a few questions. And I guess I would preface before we get into the questions, this is just an overview and a summary, and you're getting the book for the first time tonight. So again, if you want to make a time with me to go over the details, happy to do that, and happy to work with Mary on the agenda to get into any level of detail that comes out of tonight's meeting.
Fred?
Hey, Rich.
Excuse me, Fred, before anybody talks, since we only have a few microphones and we are on Zoom, I want to ask everybody when they do talk to be as close to the microphone as possible, please.
Rich, can you talk a little bit more about these unspent articles and available funds?
Yeah.
So when I look at the numbers between there's the 7 million number and the 4 million number, can you tell me what that is?
I don't have that page in front of me, Fred.
It's page 26.
Let me see if
It's the cumulative total of the 2025 revised budget and the 2025 available. Those 2 numbers.
oh, okay. So the budget number is the amount that was rolled over from the prior fiscal year, plus additions of from what was approved at the last town meeting for fiscal year 25. So that's the budget. But of course, many of those budgets have had money spent against them. And if the money hasn't been spent, but we've issued or let a contract for a project, then we issue a purchase order so that it's encumbered, so that we know that it's coming and we don't spend it twice, obviously. And so that's an encumbrance. And whatever's left is what's available. So typically what I do is try to look at the available column to see, is there any, line by line, or are any of those accounts or any of those projects not going to get done? And if so, those would be the ones that might be available to be reappropriated into a new project.
But do they have to be appropriated into the same department that they're originally allocated for?
No, we could use it for anything. It's a town meeting reappropriation. So, for example, so typically what you'd see if instead of let's say we wanted to do town hall, the HVAC project, but 550,000 is a lot of money. and we don't want to allocate our current free cash for that. Maybe we have unspent articles, probably wouldn't be 550,000 worth, but let's say 200 of it could be funded by these old articles that we ended up not doing the projects after all, or they came in under budget. And so instead of asking for 550 of free cash, we would ask for 350 and ask to reappropriate 200,000 from these old articles that are now available to us.
But is that $4,517,000 available to reappropriate to other projects? That's what I'm asking you.
Well, the vast majority of those are in the facilities replacement accounts. So if we appropriate was $125,000 every year for town hall, let's say year one, we don't spend a dime, but we appropriated 125,000. That 125,000 stays in the facilities replacement account, and the next year we add another 125, so we'd have 250,000. And the idea there is you're trying to pre-fund the capital needs to avoid borrowing. You might, 250,000 might sound like a lot of money, but maybe in year 4, you're going to have to replace all the windows or something to that effect. So you're trying to accumulate the resources necessary to do the upcoming projects. And that was the point of the engineering studies, to try to get a benchmark for what's an appropriate amount to fund each of these buildings and get that long-term 20-year cost into. Basically what we did is we straight lined that over 20 years. So, if the engineering study result was you need $2 million over 20 years, I divided it by 20 years, that's 100,000 per year.
Right. Good enough.
Does anybody else have any questions? Thank you very much, Rich. And
Thank
we'll
you.
see you to discuss it further at our next meeting on the 19th of December.
Great. Well, thank you, and take care, everybody.
Yep. Take care. I'm going back to the agenda, and we do have 2 interviews this morning, or I should say this morning, I'm okay, this afternoon. As I believe all of us know, Tom McNamara resigned a while back, and his term is up on 6/30/26. And so we have 2 individuals that are interested in joining the Finance Committee. And we will start with Steve. Can we call you Steve?
Yes, you
Yeah,
can.
yeah. And the members of the committee have seen your resume that you submitted a while back. And so perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us about yourself and why you'd like to join our committee.
Well, good afternoon, all. I brought the rain, which we all needed. And hopefully we get a couple more days of it. It's been a very interesting rainstorm today, which is the best kind. My name is Steve Doret. I lived in the town of Westboro, which is near Worcester, since 1971 or so. But interestingly enough, since 76, my wife, who you see sitting back there, Gretchen, and I vacationed here on Kingsbury Beach Road until about 1996 or 7, and eventually we bought a house here. So I've been associated with EastEM ever since 1976. And as a result, know a lot more, I guess, about the town than most people would who are part-time residents here. These days, we are here probably 3 days a week. And obviously on long weekends, we're here maybe 5. So we're in and out of the town quite often. My background is I'm a civil engineer. I was trained at Northeastern and MIT, as you've read from my resume. I worked for New England Power Company for most of my career when New England Power decided it would sell all its assets, including Mass Electric and various hydro facilities. I ended up working for myself. I'm a hydroelectric engineer and have been doing so since I graduated from college, which was a long time ago. What else? My interest, I guess, as you know from my resume, is in public service as well as building things, engineering-wise, as well as analysis of what it is and decision-making associated with projects like that. My interest here is that we're all in the same boat relative to what the town has to spend. And I feel that based on my background, that I could be an asset to the town of Eastham to participate in the decision-making associated with what's needed, what we might modify, or what we might either eliminate or improve as part of service here. Also, as you know from my resume, that I started service in my town in Westboro in 1976. I was on the planning board for almost 9 years. From the planning board, I became a member of the Board of Selectmen for 2 terms, 6 years. I served on the finance committee in the town for 9. And after that period of time, I became the chair of a school building committee and have built or modified all 6 buildings in our school system, and have had a lot of dealings with the MSBA, which is now the source of money for how you build stuff in school systems. Near the end of the first MSBA project, which was approximately 2004, I became a member of the school committee and served as the chair. During most of my career in town government, I have been the chair of those various committees. And I guess the bottom line benefit to my wish, I guess, to help here is the knowledge that background brings. I mean, one of the things you just talked about was leftover money in accounts associated with town meeting projects. How they get there is, as was explained, but for me, the jargon of this business, I'm well versed in, and having had to argue for and against fire department and police department and other purchases from every side of the table, either pro or con. I was normally con on the Board of Selectmen, but as I became more interested, if you will, in some of the other seats that I sat in, I became positive, which was kind of interesting when I was caught on some of those ideas from the chief of police saying, well, how come now you're in favor of these things? And so, well, we need it, So as I said, there's a background here that I think could be quite helpful. But probably the most important thing, I think, is to bring to the table, my expertise as a civil engineer. As I said, as a hydroelectric engineer, I've been all over the place, including Canada and Mexico and in Europe. And through that, I've got the ability to have seen many different ways to approach various projects. And, as a result, it creates an open mind to listen and figure out what's the best way to solve the problem. Not necessarily the one that you see, but there may be background and other things that help decision-making to come up with the best answer. And so from the general interest here is simply that. I think my service speaks to the idea that once started, I'm a long-term member to the extent that people want me to be in these actions. As I said, I worked on 6 school projects, 2 brand new ones, and the rehab of the other 4. In each one, we've saved money by virtue of the process I just mentioned, and that once we have a contractor on site and once we have quality drawings to work with, we do not deviate. We do not add to the project because nobody can afford those extras. So to the extent that we do it right the first time and we manage the work in every seat that I sat in, as well as chair of the school committee, the outcomes have always been positive. We've always come to the end of the project with money left over. And that's very difficult these days, as you know. I'm sure the contributions that the towns are making in regards to the upgrading of the regional high school here are tough. And one of the things that happens with projects that are funded from the outside, such as MSBA or others, is that the contingencies that are built into the project are there because of, let's say, the management of projects aren't necessarily the best. And so as things creep into the job, those contingencies are there for the MSBA not to be embarrassed. But on the other side of the coin, with those contingencies, if we can figure out how to save them and not execute change orders, whether it be for school buildings or otherwise, the outcome is positive. We put money back in the town's pocket to be used, as was discussed, for other things. And I'm pretty proud of that, because that has been my training, to be able to analyze and to make decisions. You know, from the point of view of the seat that one sits in. Happy to answer any questions, I guess, that you might have in terms of, you know, let's say my service, if you chose to choose me for the seat that's open.
Are there,
I have a question.
Paul?
First of all, thank you for coming in and applying. Was there something specific that got you to apply? You walked up and read about a town meeting and just said, these idiots need help.
Well, first of all, I've always been interested in what happens in whatever town I'm paying taxes in, which of course is this one. I do have a residence here, as I mentioned, and my tax bill is probably just as bad as everybody else's. And therefore I have, you know, not only an interest to serve, but an interest to serve that benefits us all. And so from that point of view, you know, my interest is, as I said, to analyze the information before you and help to pick the best decision that works for the outcome. And sometimes they're not the best decision that could be made, but they are the one that works, you know, for how we're doing. And town government, as you know, is quite complicated. There's a lot of different things that get into the decision-making, including every employee that works for the town, police, fire, DPW, and all departments have a say in what happens. So it's important to listen to that input, so that in fact the decision-making, you know, as a group, finance committees, I don't know how big yours is, but ours was 9. And there are a lot of different opinions from 9 people that sit at the table. And so, you know, the outcome is in any discussion, let's call it a negotiation, because the training that I've had for negotiation is everybody has to win. Not everybody can get everything, but when you negotiate fairly, then everybody does win. As you've heard recently, there's 3 school departments that are on strike in North Shore. When I first joined the school committee, which was 20 years ago, the first year I was there, I had to deal with the negotiation of striking teachers. I learned from that that's a big mistake. Somehow you have to meet in the middle. And as a result of those kinds of discussions with you know, the teachers union in our town, we have not gone on strike. We have settled amicably, you know, for every year after, which are 3-year contracts, to the point where we have a very high quality school department. You may have heard last year that the bus drivers went on strike in 3 towns. They started on strike in our town. They decided to leave the union on the basis of the fairness of what we did in how we negotiated with them. They're still there. And although we did have some difficulty filling the roles, this year we have 100% of the drivers that are needed. And so, again, that's the experience of this process of town government, to do the best you can with the tools that you have in front of you, including money. In my last interview, we talked about, you know, what are the finances of Westboro versus the issues for towns like Eastham. I understand that you're pretty close, or not at your levy limit, versus our town. That we're lucky that we've had a lot of influx, a lot of technical construction.
You have much more commercial business.
Right. Although obviously that changes with inflation and everything else, but uh, you know, while I was on the planning board, our purpose in the zoning was to create an industry in a way that was quality, so that in fact, first of all, the businesses would be there for a long time, but second of all, that it would be attractive if they left. And so we had a lot of people, a lot of companies, if you will, that moved on. And we've refilled the commercial space with new developments. Amazon is the current one that filled what used to be a pharmaceutical company. So, you know, we had the opportunity to be attractive, and as I say, fair negotiation is the best way to go. That way, everybody gets something, but not everybody gets everything. So that's pretty much my background, I guess. Hopefully that answered.
Steve, how many committees are you involved with?
Steve, excuse me, Steve, could you use the
Sorry.
microphone?
Yeah. How many committees are you currently involved in Westboro, or is that behind you at this point, or?
Say that again, please.
How many committees are you currently involved with on Westboro?
Right now,
Yeah.
I'm chair of the school committee, and that's it.
Okay,
Although I do serve, you know, as a seat, if you will, on a couple of other boards, but
Mhm.
mostly all of that is within the school department.
and the other question I was wondering too is time commitment as far as call it late winter, early spring?
Yeah,
off
I'm
there?
good. I think you meet on Thursdays, correct?
We meet, our normal schedule is every third Thursday, every third week on Thursday at 4 o'clock, like we are today. But I will say that starting probably in December through March and April, we are meeting every week.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, one of the things that we talked about in my first interview was how could I do that?
Mm.
As it turns out, you know, I guess I'm sort of aimed at retirement in terms of my engineering profession. I have a few jobs that I have to finish up.
Mhm.
As I mentioned earlier, I've been all over the world. These are a lot closer, but they're still in the United States. Pretty much I work from home now, and I can work from anywhere. So knowing in advance what a schedule is, I can be here for every meeting. I wasn't sure before, but having now thought about it and the ability to move schedules around, the school committee meets twice a month on Wednesdays, so it's not a conflict.
Mhm.
And given that you're in the afternoon, I can get here easily enough, mainly because I can do work from here in the day that I'm,
Mhm.
let's say, doing this. So it's really not a problem.
And Thursdays probably work out
Best,
well for you, because then you can stay a weekend.
that's right. So I figured that one out too. Yeah, we love East Hampton.
As a part-time resident, have you been attending many of finance committee meetings in the past? Over the years that you've been a part-time resident, have you attended the town meetings even though you were a non-resident?
No, and I'll tell you why. In part because in up until what, about a year and a half ago, maybe it was a little longer than that. As a non-registered voter in the town, you couldn't serve on town committees. As you may recall, that the legislature now allows you to appoint voters, if you will, to town committees. And so as a result of that, I didn't feel that my time would have been well spent to do that because I couldn't affect anything. However, in the position on the finance committee, I can have a role. I can help advise. I can help manage a thought process, if you will, that gets to the point I think finance committees are supposed to do. And that is to analyze and advise the board of select, I guess board of selectmen, maybe it's select board, I'm not sure what it is.
Select board.
Okay, you know, and others in the town, and the purpose is, in my opinion, is to develop the discussion for the town meeting members who can't attend and know the details. And so my experience is in my own finance committee was to be able to provide the recommendation and the background behind what the recommendation was for town meeting. So I'm assuming that your town meeting runs pretty much the same as ours did mainly because it's legislated to do so.
Do you have any questions for us, unless there's somebody else that has a question here? Patty?
What do you see, your experience is very impressive. I want to just find out a little more about what you see as some of East Ham's current or near future challenges.
The sewage issue in terms of sewers and the sewage treatment plant, wherever it may be, is the issue that will kill us all if we don't do it well. I mean, seriously, this is really big money for a town with the levy limit that you have. Certainly the ability to understand what the engineers are saying and whether they've looked at all proper alternatives, whether they've come up with a proper evaluation of those alternatives, whether they figured out how we're going to get it done, in what streets are the sewers going. One of the things I did as a member of the Board of Selectmen in Westboro was help work on being able to sewer the entire town, because 3/4 of it was ledge. And that was restricting our industrial development, because they didn't have a place to dispose of the sewage. We also ended up with a joint treatment plant between the towns of Shrewsbury, Westboro, and Hopkinton, for which we did very well. We had to expand that plant about two to 3 years ago, and it made a big difference in the river that runs through us, which is we're at the headwaters of the Assabet and Concord rivers, and so in effect, those towns were creating some real problems in the river. So that certainly would be a target. I know that there are other representatives that serve on that committee, but certainly even from here, from this committee, that kind of discussion and the ability to do the best we can, I guess, with that investment, and including how long the bond might be. You know, the total, as I understand now, is pushing $200 million for this process. When you look at a 20-year bond for little towns, that's really tough. So the first thing I would look for is, one, getting legislation approval that will allow us to have it, say, a 40-year bond. Granted, the interest is there, but I understand that at least for a good portion of it, the interest may be zero on the borrowed money to build it, which means that from that point of view, we'll get what it costs without inflating the base. And that's super important. I mean, that's the only way East Ham is going to be able to survive. And so, you know, knowing full well that that's the problem, we aim to get it done before someone can say no. But anyway, that's my thought about it, and I have read the report. And there are issues, I think, in my read that perhaps as we go forward, we can figure out how to fix them or solve them, so that we do the best we can, as I said.
Do you have any further questions?
That's it. Thank you.
Roy?
Yes, couple of questions. You mentioned. in your
Fred, could you
application,
move that?
You have read our strategic plan. What are your thoughts on how our strategic plan connects with the finance committee?
Well, I can't remember the quote, but everything you have to do has money behind it. It costs money to do everything. Again, the timing of money, where the money comes from, how you raise it, whether it's a borrow with interest rate, whether you borrowed at the low of the industry or at the high of the industry, and also the ability, if you will, to have the highest rated bond that you would be allowed to have based on the circumstances of town of East Ham. We now have a new superintendent in town who's from Westwood, and in Westboro, the Westwood-Westboro discussion is kind of interesting. So I will probably do that for a while too. And again, the planning of a strategic plan, whatever it is, whether it's, capital investment in DPW equipment, whether it's the hopefully completed repairs of Town Hall here. By the way, the grass is really great out there. They did a great job. Or whatever it is in the plan, needs to have input, not just from the people that sat down and wrote it, but also from the people who have read it and think about it. And that certainly is the role of the Finance Committee in every town in Massachusetts.
Our strategic plan covers the whole operation of the town, not just finance. So there's a lot of other players in the development of that plan. And how do you deal with, how does a finance committee deal with the other players so that they understand our role and that we understand where they're coming from?
Well, our experience, if you will, as the Finance Committee that I served on, was to have members of the Finance Committee sit in those groups that are creating, if you will, a strategic plan, or let's say a change in planning board, or discussions relative to school construction or school committees. Currently in town, we have 2 members of the Finance Committee that visit from time to time with the school committee, 10 meetings, listen to presentations, understand the background behind what's built into the budget for schools. And so that, I think, is the way Finance Committee can impact and contribute to the development of any of the plans that are done by different departments of the town.
Totally unrelated question, but based on your background, I assume you worked with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Yes, one of the projects that I'm working on is with the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Army Corps of Engineers does not want to have you very close to them, particularly if you want to build a hydro unit on their dam. So, yeah, I've worked with them, not only from the engineering side there, but also associated with the paperwork, which is extreme. And I'm thinking that you probably have to deal with them relative to dredging the harbor, as well as issues of any discharge into the waters of the United States. They have a role as oversight, as well as the EPA and Mass DEP. I've worked with all of those at some level, but mostly on the paperwork side in terms of trying to get permission to build. And the current job, which is that I talked about, is in Pittsburgh. The Army there isn't well staffed, and so they built a review committee of 32 people from all over the United States, and none of them ever read anything. So it's been a lot of fun to educate them on this project. We're getting there, but it's not easy.
So is your focus primarily oversight of contractors?
It's both. It's both. In the case of the Army, I'm the chief engineer on that project. I have been since 2019. On a project that I provided engineering consulting, well, actually, I was also the owner's chief engineer on a hydro project in Putnam, Connecticut, which interestingly enough was an old mill town. They had an old mill that they were converting into 83 affordable housing units, for which there were 2 hydro turbines as part of that project. The bad news about it was the entrepreneur committed suicide on the job, and his wife, who's a school teacher, was left with this job to do. Ultimately, for reasons that made sense to her, but because of her inexperience, turned out to almost kill the project. All of the contractors left. So that's when what turned out to be a friend or not asked me if I could help. So I stepped in and started off with a problem for her, which was she thought that the title being an exempt project meant that you didn't have to talk to the regulator. So for 2.5 years, she threw every letter from the regulator, which was the federal government, in the trash can. So I had to spend 1.5 years just placating the FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, so we could build it.
Mhm.
And we finished it, more or less, we finished it in June of last year. They're making money on energy, and the energy that they're creating with the hydro units is supplying the electricity to the 83 affordable housing units in this mill. So, it's a great project, and with, you know, with the opportunity of, if you will, the trying to bring back contractors that said they'd never come back, finding contractors to pick up from afterwards. Dealing with the federal government who didn't really wanted to close it down. Anyway, it was a success, and I like I said, they're making money on the energy to the good. And I mean, maybe there's examples, maybe not in this town, but if it turns out to be some you know, mutual project that other towns around you wanted to contribute to, I'd certainly be interested in helping that, particularly if the benefit is affordable housing or lowering the cost of energy, whatever. I spent 23 years with the New England Power Company, and as a result of that, I know that side of the business as well. And it's not all what you seem, as you probably have found out, whether it be at Eversource or National Grid or any of them. So, you know, I help when I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, Fred.
Thank you for coming.
you.
You've been on the finance committee side of the fence, you've been on the school committee side of the fence. You're probably quite familiar with some of the surprises that can come from the school committee that the finance committee doesn't necessarily expect. And you said you also have changed your opinions sometimes when you're on one side of the fence versus the other. What's your thoughts now? You know, we have a regional school here. What is your thoughts on keeping communications and control of costs coming from the school committee over to the finance committee of the 4 towns?
Well, obviously, because there are 4 different controlling groups, school committee appointees, if you will, to the regional district. That the issue, I think, is to be helpful in the sense of good advice. As you know, school committees, town meeting votes the bottom line. The issues that come before town meeting certainly get reviewed by finance committees. The logic of what you get for what you pay for. I mean, one of the things that we have found, and I found as member of the school committee in my town, simply is we go to town meeting with our hands open, with the books open, and we in effect, if you will, are selling our product, which is what is the quality of education that the taxpayers in the town are buying. And we have done very well. I think as far as the was it the Greater Boston magazine recently placed us 12th in the state in terms of the education delivered. And so doesn't help, I guess, if we can't afford it. But the best we could do is to negotiate what we can afford with people who are willing to accept that. And that's difficult. You know, in the case of Westboro, we have a levy limit that's probably 30% higher than what we spend. And it's part because of the commercial people in the town. In a town with residential, in effect, affordability, that's very tough. So ultimately, the town meeting has to accept, you know, what can be afforded. Simply, as you guys already know, you can't go out and borrow everything, because if you use your free cash in the short term, you're stuck when you run out of money. And so the bottom line on that is that one has to pay attention to what's coming in and the affordability of everything that's asked for by the townspeople. And as I said in the beginning, I'm in it just as well as you are as taxpayers to this town. And I want to help as much as I can, not only for the town itself, but for all of us here, because it's really tough. to pay the taxes that we're looking at going forward. So the best answer is, let's find out as much as we can, about the other side and try to advise.
Perhaps you have some questions for the finance committee?
Well, I'm hopeful that in fact the outcome of our discussion today would put me in one of the chairs here, but based on my own background, I think I pretty much know what the process is, and I will ask this question though. As I mentioned, our finance committee has people that they assign, if you will, to each department of the town, particularly during budget time, to help as part of the understanding of what went into the budget. Do you do the same thing?
Yes, we meet with all the departments individually.
Yeah, well, it's about all you can do and hope that, that the value of the dollar goes up instead of down.
Is everybody all set without questions, et cetera? I want to thank you very much, Steve, for coming in today and being interested in joining the finance committee, and we will be in touch.
Very good, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Yep, thank you. Dee, do you want to I'll go get Ron? Okay. We have another applicant for the finance committee. His name is Ronald Lanoue. I believe that's being pronounced correctly. And he's going to be coming in shortly to introduce himself, and we will proceed as we did with Steve. I'm sorry.
You're a great candidate.
Yeah. He would stay on Earth, right?
I'm sorry.
He would stay on Earth.
That's
The eastern part.
that's what yeah, that's what I understand.
I think that's where he's got the.
Yeah,
referral.
I think Tom,
Tom.
I think Tom,
Yeah.
But Tom.
had a
through that
conversation.
Organization.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think they announced it,
Yeah.
that the legislation
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Hi, this is
Ron
Lanoue.
Hello.
Thank you.
Yeah, because this is not a finance committee. I mean, it's not a select board, it's not a select board appointment.
So,
Thank you.
yes, but thank you for being thorough, because that's the question you asked me.
Well, welcome to the finance committee, Ron.
Thanks.
And we'll ask you to introduce yourself, and then if the folks on the committee have some questions, we'll allow them some time. And then if you have some questions of us, we'll allow you some time for that too. So
Sure,
we'll let you introduce yourself.
sure. Ron Lanoue. I don't know if people had it was really it was really my work resume, but
Everybody on
Edited.
the committee has a
Yeah.
copy of your resume.
been a CPA doing tax mostly for 20 years, 20 plus. Came back to grad school to get the accounting degree back. Not totally ancient times, let's say, but around 90. Before that, I spent a good while with working, I was with Mike Dukakis, is the name that people must know, and was in the Budget Bureau doing, things relevant to Eastham, working on local aid, working on state revenue, local revenue options. I have been I'm still working actually with a it's a nonprofit. I was the board treasurer for 9 years, the LA Fund. Excuse me. And I timed out of that. We had a term limits, but still helping with that as part of their finance group. Was treasurer for a Sunday school for a while. So a lot of financial experience. I can talk about why I'm here.
Mhm.
I like East Hampton.
Mhm.
I mean, this is. Wife and I started, as we started vacationing on the Cape, we gravitated to here. We bought several years back. Before that, we'd been rented the same place forever, basically. My wife's term is, it's her happy place, because it doesn't feel like a suburb. It doesn't feel like, I just love having the bay beaches with the tidal flats, the ocean side. I'm a cyclist. I love the rail trail and just, people are sane out here. It works better. And my personal situation, well, I don't know if you bike. I see you've got a Nauset water bottle anyway, but just, you don't want to be.
I live on the bike path.
By the way, I'm not sick. This is just it's a vocal cord thing, probably even gonna get fixed in a month, but I'm not bringing in any respiratory illnesses for you, just full disclosure here.
You've got our RSV shots.
Yeah, I've had all of my shots.
Some of us.
But I just retired finally, middle of September, and I got time. And hoping I can give back, do something for the town. I think that the skill set I've got is, look, I've never worked in a local government. Obviously, I interned in Newton when I was in grad school for a while. So I had that snapshot. I don't think I put that on the resume back with, I don't know if anybody's heard of Teddy Mann, who was, I think,
Yeah.
relatively known
Yeah.
back then, but so they just had that snapshot view within town government, but I understand how financials work. I understand how you get a sense of numbers. I think, I mean, yeah, I was a tax guy, but you don't get beyond the first level in tax if you can't understand organizations, accounting, and just how they work. I'm not a programmer for sure, but you get a sense of how systems work, how they should work, what are weaknesses, just as an educated observer or user. And I can bring those skills to it, town. I don't know. I don't want to keep mansplaining for the half hour, so I don't know. What else would you like to hear me talk
Are
about?
you here full-time?
No.
Where
Part-time,
where do you divide your time from?
Newton,
Okay, in Newton, okay.
still there. We're up and down. It's just because of how shall I put it, wholly unrelated personal stuff. I haven't been able to be down here much since middle of September, but I've spent most of the summer down here. Now that I'm retired, I mean, my work was largely remote, but even with that, we're still going in the office probably once a week. No more office to go to anymore. Just periodic doctor's appointments and whatever.
I see that you were involved with, I call it KP Law. Is that,
No, that
KPMG.
KPMG.
oh, KPMG,
Yeah,
I thought that
Yeah,
was,
that's where I worked last.
Oh, is a law firm, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what does
Yeah.
KPMG stand for?
That's the names of some of the,
Marwick and Mitchell was.
yeah, Kleinveld, Pete Marwick, Girdler.
Oh, okay, so it's not related,
Collaboration. with the state.
so they're not related to KP Law, because we use them as our legal firm.
One of the big,
Big-
I don't even-
yeah, it's not a
it used to
four.
be big something a long time ago. What is it now?
Right.
Four. It was the big four.
No, it's big one,
Yeah,
right?
it's the big
Big
one.
one, big one.
When I started, it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I was in school, it was the Elite Eight, now it's the Final Four.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
There we go. That's it. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, I know what that is.
And so we have discussed the fact that although at this time we're meeting on the third Thursday of every month at 4 o'clock like today, starting probably in a month or so, we start meeting every week.
Yep.
What is your availability if that was the case?
I'll be available. I mean, I've got a vacation booked school vacation, kind of from the middle of what school vacation week into the next week in February. I have kid number one is on the West Coast, San Francisco, and with a little luck, I have a grandkid in the spring, and we'll certainly get out to meet him or her at that point, but no, I plan to be down here. I mean, I understood the commitment from what you can see from the I mean, on the website, you can see the meeting schedule, and then town meeting is like second week. in May?
Usually in May.
Third, first Monday of May. was
Yeah.
probably- But, and we're both usually we have to get the warrant for the town meeting to the printer. on
April.
April 1st.
Mhm.
So we're pretty much,
Right.
you
Sure.
against it until then.
Do you want to, you have a
No,
question?
he's not.
Oh,
talking about
oh,
microphone. You're supposed to be the police on that.
President, come out.
You thought, Fred.
Sorry.
No, I have a question. Are you on the finance committee at Newton too?
No,
Oh,
I've not been involved in Newton.
so what is that finance committee 2023, the president? Is that part of the LE fund?
Oh, yeah, yes.
That's under the LE?
Oh,
Okay.
It's a charity, 501c3, that's because it does support services for people with breast cancer.
Okay, yeah, I knew that, yeah.
Okay,
So-
and I'm still part of their finance committee. I was
Under
board
the-
treasurer for
okay.
9 years, 3 terms, because we'd set a policy, so I rolled off middle of 23, or August of 23. But I'm
You
still
mentioned that
involved with them.
earlier,
Yeah.
right? The finance committee was just stuck in my head, I think, when I
Right,
read
right
your
now,
resume the other day. So, okay.
How big an outfit is that?
It's now about
Huge.
4 million top line. Should come close to that in revenues, through October, 3.738. Got a great executive director, and hey, if I wanted to puff myself, I'd claim credit, but I can't claim credit for this. When I joined, it was a $450,000 organization. And it's been grown in the 9 years. We've got a dynamite executive director who used to run the New England Home for Little Wanderers. But that's a job where you got to do a bunch of jobs. I had to do a bunch of jobs. I oversaw the budget process. I had to worry about systems as not really hands-on, but okay, what do we need to do to get things to work? Internal controls. The organization that size is vulnerable to, not that there was anybody around it didn't have goodwill toward it, but you always gotta think the worst case. And just protect the assets, which is basically the cash. And it also fingers in HR policies, fingers in just the client service policies. I mean, an organization like that, it's all about delivering the services. And how much can we afford? How far can we stick our neck out? So that was the 9 years in a nutshell.
I have another question. Glad to hear you love Eastham. That's why you're here, because that's why I'm on the committee as well. I'm a finance geek. It was in finance my whole life, but I love Eastham, so I'm here on the committee. What do you see as some of the current challenges, or some of the negatives, some things that we could improve in the currently and in the near future?
Hearing Rich Bienvenu talk about it sounds like a very round number, 150 million for wastewater treatment, and how we managed to get that approved, get that accepted, and then make it happen. I mean, just in narrow financial sense, seems to me that's the big task of the next couple of years. And again, it's not like I have long time exposure to paying attention to local issues, but boy, that sure focuses attention.
Certainly.
Aside, Sorry,
Certainly an elephant.
yeah.
Large
aside,
one.
aside from that, I mean, it seems to me the big challenge is this part of the Cape, the whole Cape, housing. For all the obvious reasons. And what role can finance play in helping to ameliorate that in the Outer Cape? And then the environment and climate change. I have to say, I felt scared, not scared, but there's someone in the Times talking about it. There was an op-ed in the Times just earlier this week of someone who had talked to a reporter, I guess at the Provincetown Independent, on could there be this kind of wildfires out here? And the answer is sure thing.
Lack of rain.
Yeah, and that's called climate change driven. But you can see the beach erosion, you can see the and of course the concerns that prompt the wastewater, the need for that, but I would think those are the things that are going to be the big challenges here.
Thank you for your interest and thank you for being here.
Sure.
I just had a question that we posed to the last person, so
Yeah.
in fairness, level playing field. Have you attended any finance committee meetings, either remotely or observed any? And have you been to any of the town annual meeting? Town meeting?
Not been to a town meeting. Once I applied for this, I attended remotely the last one. I don't know if you saw the odd phone number on the screen then, but that was me.
Great.
I poked around the town website, the State Division of Local Services, so.
Do you have some questions for us?
Right?
Oh, sure,
sure.
Roy, sure.
Let me take a guess. You have a master's in
Yeah.
public policy from Harvard. Um, How does that relate to municipal government, if at all? Answer it
Sure.
candidly.
It was a long time ago. I mean, Kennedy School was great to learn something about how to approach thinking about government, how government can go and solve problems. And I used that to I worked for a while for Mass Taxpayers Foundation and then worked for and then went to Dukakis and worked there till it was after he failed in the presidential run and was gonna leave office at all. So it gave me some skill set. It gave me an intro to part of a career.
So, when you were working for the caucus, is that when you went to the Office of Administration and Finance?
Yeah, that's right. And I was there for, dates are probably on the resume, but I started there, I'm gonna guess about 83 and was there until about 90.
So,
And at that point, it was also, he was gonna leave,
right,
so there'd be turnover. And one of the things I figured out about myself, I'm not a great marketer. That's why I peaked as a director in my KPMG, not as a partner, but was also not going to rise to the next level in running things in government. And that's the point where as I talked to people, a couple said, you ought to get a CPA, then you can do whatever you want. CPA is really the main line to move along in a career. So that's what I did. Got the quickie 1-year degree at Northeastern.
and when you were at the Budget Division, you indicated in your resume that you developed the capital planning process. Could you elaborate on that? Was that for the state?
Yes.
Okay.
It was putting together a template for agencies to make requests, some systematized way to add them up. And And it just seemed more, I guess it had been more ad hoc before then. But that was, yeah, details at this point, I gotta admit, that was 40 years ago. But,
Don't ask me that question.
Probably everybody in this room has some issues like that.
I can remember my kids' names, don't worry.
What's the other criteria? Can you drive at night?
Oh, yeah. Can you drive at night?
Or should you drive it?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Did you have something else, Roy?
I'm just wondering, is it still around what you developed?
The capital plan
Yeah.
template?
That was almost not an era with computers. And I certainly have not, frankly, I was cleaning out the basement the other day and I don't think I have anything from there. Just the town had a shredder day, so we don't want to get rid of it.
We love those.
Thank you.
Do you have some questions for us, perhaps?
I did see the Division of Local Services did a report on the town, I think it's about 4 years ago now, with various recommendations and in various financial management, accounting systems areas. I'm just curious, what areas did the town agree with? What did it move ahead on? What did it disagree with?
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to.
It was about a 30-page report roughly that had, I mean, it started with a short description of the town finances, but then walked through, the majority were really around budget process, things like there should be written rules on how a budget's considered and reviewed.
Financial policies?
There's financial
Yeah,
policies.
Financial policies.
There was some systems issues. Gee, the town ought to try to get on such and such platforms. There was also, at the time, the town was not reconciling cash. Whoever the town accountant was not reconciling cash monthly. It all got kind of done after the fact, after the June 30th closing.
Yeah, that's been reconciled.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like it was about when our new finance director, Rich, came on, and he's pretty much been straightening all that stuff out.
Pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
Dee?
From the search committee,
I should introduce Dee Mattveld. She is from the search committee and she's the one that is responsible for handling the interviews today and for the finance committee in general.
so the question we need to ask is, have you read the charge of the committee?
yes,
Okay, and you're familiar with the town strategic plan and how it applies to this committee?
I don't think he's, according to his thing, he has not read the strategic plan.
I don't think I've seen a strategic plan.
Yeah.
That's.
I mean, I seen that, I saw I saw it was on the sort of financial area of the town website.
I think there's a new one that came out, correct?
Revised.
Yeah,
It's
so,
revised, is that what?
Revised, yeah.
No, Russ is not quite finished.
Yeah.
Okay,
So there will be one.
all right.
Yeah.
Question.
Any other questions you might have of us?
What do you folks see as the big challenges?
Well, I think we all agreed with you on the wastewater. I will speak for myself. I think housing is another issue that you've also mentioned. And I think as a result of those two things, I think, and if you read the strategic plan, we would like to have a diverse community here. And in order to have a diverse community, we need housing. And in order to have housing, we need wastewater. And those things, the wastewater is an expensive proposition that we are dealing with. And we have very little commercial base here. So whatever we do is on the backs of the taxpayers. Now, somebody else might like to comment on whatever I've said.
And we want to do a lot, and we don't have a lot of money, so we gotta manage what we can do for growth. And part of that growth depends on the chicken and egg of the wastewater and bringing a diverse population here, and retaining talent we have.
Does anybody else have any comment in regards to that
I agree
question?
with I agree with what you said. I mean, the big thing is housing, along with the wastewater for me. I despair about the housing.
I agree with, you know, a lot of the things you said. One of my new issues is Route 6. I just see a lot of traffic and a lot of speeding. And I know it's not something, you know, something the town is working on, talking about. There will be some money spent on it. There's been some studies on Route 6. But I know, you know, I always think housing. I always think of a lot of the things, but I'm afraid to drive on Route 6 sometimes.
Yeah, in the summer, in the summer.
Really lately, you see an accident every day and it's getting more and more crowded, so I'd like to see that.
Some people have trouble understanding what a red light means.
The recreational
means.
It can be bad. Any other comments from any other member? Okay.
I'll say one thing.
Sure.
Which is, you know, we have two candidates for one spot.
Yeah.
And so, we'll have to vote and pick one, but I would just say if you're not the one selected, please don't lose hope, because there are openings all the time, and there'll be a slot open soon.
I don't know that he's telling us he's leaving or not.
Don't get up.
I didn't think he was a leaving kind of guy.
Are you next in line for?
I might be, no, I don't think I am, I just
No,
renewed this.
I know, I'm
But-
just kidding.
Yeah,
I'm the new guy.
but every year,
Yeah,
every year there's one.
And I did say earlier that the individual that you would be replacing, I did resign maybe a month or 2 months ago. And his term is up on 6/30/26, so that would be the term that you would be filling.
And then you'd be eligible for 3 more after
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
A few more.
Yeah.
Three, I think, three.
Three.
I thought it
It's
was 9
9
consecutive
years.
9.
No, right, but you don't count if you are using somebody else's time and fulfilling that time period, then that doesn't count towards the time period that you're on
Yeah,
the
you're
board.
fulfilling an unexpired term.
Unexpired
so
term.
that Doesn't count.
It doesn't count.
You have
No,
3
no.
terms after that.
Oh, well, see,
Yeah.
the search
You
committee.
could be here
learns
forever.
something new.
all the time.
If you do anything for too long, you've been on the job too long. And then that's,
Yeah, that's a good point, I guess, we should know. We do have term limits in East Hampton.
Yeah, right.
And there are 3 consecutive terms.
Right, 9 years.
You have to sit out at least a year. So that's good, it gets turned on.
The town charter is actually really interesting reading. I,
Good to hear you say that.
well, thank you, Peter.
Isn't that good?
For that.
Quit.
I quit.
I'll ask this because I do see Rich Benvenue's not on, but just in general, what's your sense of how well the town is run? I don't know if you have any contrast with any of the other, I don't know, other Cape Towns or.
Haven't been around. So we've had we've had 2 town administrators in my time here. One was excellent with numbers and she pretty much, one feels that she could have someone that was even better, and we have that person. So we have one a town administrator that's excellent at her job. And we have an assistant town manager that is just a real numbers guy, and he just really, he doesn't miss a trick, is my opinion. And he just bombed us with 140 pages of detail, and we got to sort of.
No
So
shortage of
I think,
detail.
you know, from a
Yeah.
management perspective, both from the town manager as well as the assistant town manager, they've got the ballpark covered very well.
I think we're extraordinarily fortunate to have Rich
Well,
and Jackie both. So,
in comparison with other.
Yeah, I was just
other
going to
towns,
say,
Yeah.
you probably read about Wellfleet.
I have heard Wellesley horror stories.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought that's who he was talking about with the first time.
and I can say that I worked for the town of Truro. And so I have internal experience in the town of Truro, so we're very fortunate.
Yeah, Rich has actually been consulting with some of the
Yes.
surrounding
Huh.
towns, helping them get their finance.
He's helped
Only, I
departments.
hope, no job offers.
Not allowed.
He's helped Wellfleet, he's helped Doret, yeah. Right, yeah. Anything else you'd like to ask?
But
Thanks.
he's not a magician. We still have
Yeah,
the problem of.
How to
money.
pay for everything,
Yeah.
yeah,
We just have to pick and choose what we can do.
yeah.
One thing we know we gotta do,
We
so
come in.
everything else kind of.
Okay.
Okay.
well,
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much
very
for
much.
coming this
Thank you.
evening, and, you know, thank you very much for applying.
Yeah, thank you very
Thanks.
much. Mom.
Thank you, Dee, for
Oh, you're
your
welcome.
services, on the search
My
committee.
pleasure. Shall I leave this paperwork with you, Mary, or,
Okay, okay.
and you and I have to discuss, who will be in contact with the, interviewers?
I'm sorry?
You, you
wanna
or
give-
I will have to be in contact.
Yes, yeah.
When you're finished.
Yeah,
with the-
yeah.
I can be on the channel, if you like.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, very good, thank you.
Enjoy the rain. The
For
beneficial
the
rain.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to see it raining.
We need it.
I don't need it.
It's so bad. It's just scary.
Yep.
I mean, I did see on the globe had a map of wildfire locations around the state. They're not on the Cape.
No,
Thank God.
Yeah,
We're lucky we got that, what was it, 7 inches of rain we got in September?
yeah.
That really helped a lot.
Yeah.
The rest of the state didn't get that.
no, but they.
There's one in Blue Hills.
Yeah.
And Blue Hills is not easy to get to, those trails are.
Right, it's right by home.
Fires in New York City in parks.
Yeah,
But it hasn't until maybe they.
well, they have had no rain at all, nothing. So.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
Thanks, Dave.
thank you, Dee. Yeah, I'll be in touch with you, Dee, yeah. Thank you, Ron. Okay, folks. Would people like to make a nomination for an individual to replace Tom McNamara?
We take a straw vote to see where people are leaning with which candidate.
I don't know, what are people's thoughts on how to proceed? We need to make a decision and
It's not often we have two candidates like that.
Right.
It's,
if you want to
Time to change it.
discuss it, I mean, I have my thoughts and I'm sure everybody here has their thoughts.
As a new member, can I hear some of the thoughts of people that have been on the committee longer?
Well, you've probably been on the committee the longest. No,
I-
I don't mean, no.
I just want to hear your thought. I have my thoughts, but I want to hear yours. 'cause
Well,
you-
I think that, like I said, it's rare that we have any candidates, and then to have two well-qualified candidates makes it a little
Actually,
harder.
we did, when Paul came on, we had Paul and Tom at the same
Yeah, yeah,
time.
that's right.
So times are changing.
Which is.
Well,
why
it
I was
wasn't-
really nice to Tom, you know.
Yeah, don't give up. I should have
Yeah.
mentioned you as an
Right,
example.
right, because Tom was elected and then we
Right,
lost
right.
somebody and you were
Right.
selected next.
But no, we used to have to beat the bushes, so.
Well,
Not
I'm glad
anymore.
we don't have
Not
to.
anymore, right.
Right.
Why did you get me back on that? But I think that, you know, one of the candidates, in my opinion, has a very broad view of things. It might be useful in other things we're working on in this town, which was what drew me to liking one candidate over the other, but I think they were both great. But I think one of them has some experience that we could draw on, not just for this committee, but for other important things that we're doing in this town.
I'm assuming that person is a non-resident.
They both.
They both are.
Well, the one that Ron does not say that he's a non-resident.
Right, but he is.
So yeah.
Did we, I thought we confirmed that he's not full-time. No?
I
We
think
didn't ask for
he
that?
may have, well,
He
the
sort of-
box that you check on that is a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
confusing, so
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah,
They're both part-time
Both part-time
residents.
residents, okay.
and
yeah.
One's in Newton.
One's
One's
in
Newton,
Newton and
one's in
one's
Westboro.
one is in Westboro,
Right.
still doing work. for the
Steve,
town.
Steve is in Westboro
But they're
still.
both
on-
part-time.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
but I thought Ron said, I am Ron has, yes, I am a resident. Yes.
So
Versus,
he
Well, that's
may consider.
consider that, whereas, yes, I am a resident, Steve says no.
So
I'm-
he
I'm
could
just-
be- he could be registered to
Maybe,
vote here.
maybe he's
Right,
moved.
yeah, he could be, his primary
Yeah, yeah,
residence
yeah,
could
yeah.
be here instead of Newton. Right. So.
Steve?
I agree. When I saw the resumes, I said this is gonna be a tough decision.
Mhm.
And then I met them, and it's not a tough decision, in my opinion. I
Mhm.
mean, I was kind of blown away by Ron as far as his experience in the multiple committees as well as
Yeah.
large projects that we're talking
Steve,
about.
Steve and
You're
me.
talking.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
Mhm.
And the other thing too is his engineering background.
Right.
You know, you look at the projects that we got coming up. It's important to have somebody that really and truly understands that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So I was impressed with it. Yeah.
Does anybody want to make a nomination to
Could
approve?
I just, my only concern, and I guess I'm putting my human resources hat on, and also my hat on as a member of the search committee as well, is one of the things that we hear from committees is new members come in and, they potentially may not they may not listen, they may be more leaning towards, I come from this background and I'm gonna show you how to do things
Mhm.
because this is how the
We
way
did it
I've
before.
always done it. And I'm a little bit concerned that I think you asked a question or someone asked a question and it never got answered. There was 5 or 10 minutes that went by of a lot of talk and there was no answer. And my concern would be about this committee and our efficiency. And we're not Newton, we're not Westboro, we're Eastham. And I would be concerned about someone maybe potentially taking a boilerplate that works someplace else and pushing it here.
Applying it here?
That would be my concern, and the fact that there were questions that were asked and they really weren't answered. There was a lot of talk. And I know I'm talking a lot right now, and I don't want to take all the air out of the room, so I
I got the same vibe.
I'm leaning in a
I
different
got the same vibe.
direction.
Yeah, I asked Steve Doret, the engineer, if he had read our strategic plan.
Mm.
And he was talking about the strategic plan of the finance committee.
Mhm.
I was talking about
The
the
strategic-
town's
Strategic plan for the town of Eastham.
Right, because I wanted to know how he saw it connected to our work,
Mhm, mhm.
and I didn't get that from him. And maybe I didn't explain it to him correctly. But that one there,
Mhm.
Well, the only difference would be you take a look at a large accounting firm, you kind of assign clients and you kind of work with one client for multiple years,
Mhm.
where, you know, with engineering, he's working with dozens of clients simultaneously, a lot of times. Multiple projects, large projects. So he's kind of more diverse in his experience, I would think. You know, just from a background, which I think would be more applicable to be able to be more diverse and understand different things.
I liked Ron's sense of humor. I think sense of humor, to me, this is just me, I think sense of humor is probably, from my perspective, one of the most important things that we should all have. I think we need that to live every day. I liked his comments on, you mentioned it, I like Eastham, I love Eastham.
Yeah.
I think he was right on with his comments on the wastewater and the housing. I felt like he was willing to listen to other people's thoughts and ideas as far as the discussion of issues was concerned. I did interview Steve before. This is not the first time I've met with Steve. And I do have some concerns about him maximizing the time with his comments, questions, thoughts. He goes on and on for lengthy periods of time, I think. Those are some of the comments of my thoughts.
I agree. As I said, I'm a new member, so I really wanted to get everybody
Yeah,
else's
yeah.
opinions. I felt like Ron has a passion for
Mhm.
Eastham. And I felt like he was like, wow, Eastham's, it's already great, but we could still make it better. Where I felt like Steve was just kind of like, we gotta do this, we gotta do this, we gotta stop this, I don't know, it was just my impression that. And I think it could be
Wait,
better.
So
Fred?
I hear what you all say, but this town desperately needs engineering resources. It's something that comes up over and over again, that we don't have an engineer in-house that can kind of look over the shoulder of what's going on, but the things. The other thing is, Stephen has experience with school committees. We kind of struggle in that area, and understanding what goes on that side of the fence, to me, those are two big ticket items. It's stuff that, in this, you talk about the strategic plan, the wastewater, the infrastructure, the roads that we want to do. That's all engineering stuff. And I just think that we need that expertise. And I think also on the school side of things, that's a budget that surprises us, and we need to be, if we have someone who understands the workings of it, especially someone who's been the school committee chair, not just, I think it's just a valuable asset.
Do you think you'll be able to take the information that he's learned about in Westboro and be able to differentiate and apply things here successfully?
Well, we're a smaller scale, I think, by a lot. But I think so.
And my takeaway is, and it came across at the last interview more than today, but I think he said that he's good at compromising, or that he thinks it's important to compromise and find a way through and move ahead. And I don't think he would have been able to stay on all these committees if he wasn't good at that. I was a little concerned at the long-winded answers, but some of that may be, if I was in his shoes, I mean, I start blabbing to answer a question and don't know when to stop, land the plane.
Well, is he like that, just one-on-one?
Yeah, he was,
What, the last time?
the last time.
Well, he was on a select board, so he's a politician too. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
but that's just his nature of the thing.
Yeah.
but I think all the others are, those other characteristics are positives, so if he starts talking too much, we'll just have to quiet him down. But I'd be in favor. I'm not worried about him taking over the meetings. I don't think he's that kind of a person.
No.
You
But
know,
he does tend to rise to the chair. Not that your job is in jeopardy.
He does.
No, I'm not-
Maybe you'd like that.
I'm not the chair.
necessarily bad.
I'm just sitting here for a period of time trying to
Keeping the seat warm.
do what I.
And we do have a vote.
Right.
Yeah, right. You can move me out there anytime.
I think one.
Yeah. No, thanks.
One thing that Ron said that I thought was really great was he said, you know, you always got to take the worst case scenario and work with that to try to come up with something that works.
works.
So I think there's some humility there that, I don't know. I'm new too, so.
You think that Steve has an understanding of what he would be getting into as far as, I don't think $160 million wastewater project he would be bothered by it at all. My concern is, what do you got to back it up in terms of money?
Mm.
Mm.
I will
Well-
say that in Westboro, they've never had an override. He
good.
told us that they've never had an override,
And
so he has
school-
never,
and school construction coming in. under
so he
budget.
has never dealt
Yeah.
with,
They have a lot of business.
with, yeah, they have
Yeah,
large commercial,
exactly.
large
We should have
commercial
had last-
property, and never had an
Everybody has
override.
office there.
And he said they're 30% or 20% under their tax levy.
Yeah.
Well,
How does-
Amazon-
They
how
got
does
a
that-
huge, well, they got a huge tax limit.
Right.
Amazon.
They have warehouses?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
They actually, in the 128 belt,
But-
Westboro is
That's
Yeah,
right.
oh, yeah.
where all the business are.
Show my
Yeah,
ignorance, but
yeah,
isn't your
exactly.
tax levy set by your taxes from the prior year? Plus,
I didn't understand how you could be.
so I don't see how you can be.
But it's part of the
I-
base.
Huh?
It's your base. Right?
The
Your
levy
is based on
amount
your-
is
Your taxable
what you,
real
What
estate.
you need,
what your taxes were the year before plus
2.5%.
2.5%
2.5%.
plus new growth.
new growth.
So maybe they get a lot of new growth, but I
That's
don't
the
know
only
how you
thing I
can
can
land
think. It's the
20 or
only thing I
30.
can think to get 20%
Yeah.
is that you're getting.
The
more
new
business.
growth.
They're probably rehabbing those
All-
office buildings all the time out there.
Huh?
They're probably rehabbing those office
We're
buildings
getting
all
more
the time.
equipment all the time.
Especially with having COVID, probably all sorts of things are
Mm.
happening because commercially.
And Boston got so expensive that, things
Yeah,
moved to
moved out.
Newton, and then it was Bedford, and then it was further out, it became Westboro, so.
But I think we'd be fine with either of them.
I'd like to have them both, you know.
I know, right?
Fred, you could go back to making cookies.
Hey, don't have to ask me twice.
Yeah, their personalities would offset them.
That's right. Right. I
Yeah, their
remember having that re-
personalities are very different.
I remember having that reservation about Tom. a little bit
Oh,
different.
yes, yes,
But,
with
but
Tom
when he-
and Paul.
When Tom was,
Yeah, yes.
when he left, I said, is he gonna be bored with this, Because he's so high powered
Yeah, he came on strong
and.
and that was the
Same
way,
question.
that's the way he is.
And
Nothing-
and it was fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Did we ask Steve if he intended to give up the committees he's on?
No,
No.
no.
He's not
Somebody asked
part
him
of-
how many he was still on.
He's not on any.
He's just,
He's-
he's
he's
just on.
still-
there.
he's
still-
the
school
chair
committee.
of the school committee.
Oh,
That's
school-
right.
Yeah.
that's right, right.
Yeah,
And he said he
chair-
was on a couple of other committees as well.
Well,
about their one, but there's another community out there.
Oh, that's right. we
Oh,
had
that's
to
right.
discuss
We've
that.
got to be out of here yeah. Thank you, Vera.
Okay.
No, yeah. No, that's not true
I
because
thought East Hampton just.
Wayne sent me an email saying that that's not true.
They put a sign up
Yeah,
outside. that said
right,
EDO is
that's not
moving
true.
around
It
now.
was
okay.
true until I came in here before this meeting and
So he-
Wayne
yeah,
sent me an email saying
Yeah, I
that
think.
he's moved whatever was going to be, because another meeting finished sooner, he's moved what was coming here to there.
East Hampton dog owners.
So, yeah,
East
so
Hampton
we're,
dog
so
owners,
we're
and
okay.
There's a sign up
We're
there. to
okay,
tell them
yeah.
to go.
They're quite to go.
Yeah.
Another two things.
Nice talking.
I smell pizza.
Yeah, I saw
Yes.
probably the kitchen behind us, yeah.
It's East Hampton dog owners. They get fed.
Yeah, so,
So
so,
this is the budget for the finance committee.
so would somebody,
Make 'em-
what do people want to do? Somebody want to make a nomination for one of them, and then we have a vote, and then or somebody nominate somebody else, we have a vote
Just go around and you go for one or the other and cut them up.
vote for one of the other.
One or
Yeah,
the other.
you just go around
Yeah.
and say, who would you,
Only have two.
You pointed at me. You already said.
So-
No, Chairman.
You start.
I'm sorry?
Where do you want to start, Fred?
Yeah, I'll start with Fred.
Steve.
So just a minute, I just want to, no, just a minute, I just want to,
Gotta make a scorecard.
so I'm gonna do, I want to do Steve and Ron, and right now we have Fred for Steve.
Right.
Ron for Roy.
I think they're both wonderful, but I just like Ron better.
Ron, that's another Ron.
Steve.
Steve, that's
I also want them both, but
And
I think Ron.
Ron.
Hey,
Ron.
I agree.
Kate.
For now, Ron, I think.
Ron. I'm gonna vote this is Mary, I'm voting for Ron.
Steve,
Steve. That's 5-3. So Ron is our new member. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. And I know some people do have other things to do, but I just want to quickly the minutes.
You're making a motion or?
Do we need to make a motion? Do we?
To accept the minutes.
No, she's talking about the.
Oh, for this,
oh,
yes, we do.
Oh, okay, so
I'll make a motion.
make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, so that's Paul. And that's Roy. All in favor?
I,
Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 5. 5-3,
okay.
5-3, right?
But
One,
we
two-
abstained. We weren't here.
I'm sorry?
We abstained.
No, he's voting on that last.
Oh, I thought you were voting on the minute.
No, the minutes now. So it's 5, Mira, it's 5-3 for Ron. Thank you. And we do have minutes. Thank you, Mira, for that. The minutes are for October 17th.
I'll make a motion
And-
to accept the minutes as offered.
And that
Second.
is Kate, and the three of you were not there, Peter, Steve, and Fred, the 3 of you weren't there. Do I have a second to?
Patty.
Patty,
seconded.
okay. Any discussion on the minutes? I just have 2 things, and it's just spelling mirror up and also present. Brooke has an E at the end. You've got it right for the rest of the actual minutes itself, but, and Matthew has 2 T's in his name. It's just under where you have also present, but everything is, their names are spelled correctly in the body of the minutes. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Kate and
Second.
Patty, okay, all in favor of the minutes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 5-0. I have a bunch of new, let me see what, let me get my. I'm going to recommend that we, unless you would like to talk about the Nauset High School. You sent out,
Yeah,
does anybody have any questions on, I don't know if any of you had a chance to look, Peter sent out a large,
yeah, well, I sent out
file on
the
the.
October reports last week maybe because I took it away. And then I just today sent out the one from last night. But basically it's the same story, you know, the numbers are changing and we're still up against the contingency, but so far we still think we're gonna make it. No.
Peter, FF&E and the technology numbers, they haven't spent much money on that. Is most of that tied into the second phase?
Yeah, it's all been encumbered, I think.
Okay.
So they're even,
Or are they nervous about that?
they're tight on that.
They're tight, okay.
Yeah.
When you say tight, are you saying that they think that will go over the budget?
Well, they can't. We're going on the basis that we can't go over the budget, so they're gonna somehow, but they're not, they sure aren't gonna have anything left over.
Anything else?
The only thing that can happen, minor point, but the IT and FF&E budget are one budget.
Okay.
So they can trade back and forth between those two. And I
Yeah.
think that's what they're trying to take a little bit out of IT, because they're over on the FF&E part. Okay, we're working that out.
Oh, FF&E is not a standalone budget?
It's FF&E and IT, I believe.
I'd have to look at, I have some, some documentation here from your
Yeah.
report, but you said nothing, it's nothing on, IT.
Yeah.
Oh, IT software, oh, no, this is just expenditures.
I'd love to see how he came in under on all his, about 6 schools that he built. He must have a much more complete set of plans. Okay, so,
It's been recent, fairly recent.
his schools.
No, the school project.
Yeah.
I didn't think they could do it.
I just want to bring up one thing and not to discuss it at great length, but I would like to perhaps at our next meeting, discuss the possibility of moving monies from the free cash account to a stabilization fund for special ed costs. And I think I'd just like to have the conversation about it as something that I think we should look into. And that's, as I said, I'm just bringing it up now, not to discuss today, but something that I would like to put for a future item for discussion.
I think Rich has said he's planning on doing that.
Yeah, but how much?
Because, well, I'm pretty sure, I'm still a little confused, but when that override last year,
The 1,020,000?
yeah, that 300 and whatever thousand, the special ed at the elementary school was over.
Oh, yes,
It got passed as an override
right.
at the Maytown meeting, so it
There.
goes into this year's
It's
school
it's
budget,
in the
even
budget.
though the extra was incurred last year. So somehow, so I think, so now it was an override, so we've got that in the
It's
budget.
part of the budget
So
now.
if the special ed costs this year
Mhm.
come in under.
Then there's extra,
Then and he wants to take that extra.
right.
And start a
Special ed, a stabilization,
fund.
yeah, right.
And I
right.
think that's the way to go.
I think it's.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
there should be extra, because
Well, it
last year
varies
was an
year to year.
outlier.
Yeah.
But we had an
And
override.
I didn't attend the meeting, but did the superintendent say that as well, that last year was an outlier in terms of.
Yes,
special ed funds?
definitely.
Right, and the other thing they said was the state is a full year.
Behind.
In reimbursing, so we may get some of that money back.
Well,
over top of
Maybe
that.
put that in.
Yeah,
That was really interesting.
But yeah, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
Are they always a year behind?
yes, yes,
Yeah.
which.
Which
And
came as
so,
no surprise. Yeah.
so when you get not a new, but when you get a student that's starting the school. They need special needs, and it's after the budget has been
Set.
set, and the costs are there, then. There you are with the costs, but not in the budget. And you're not going to be getting the monies tomorrow in order to pay for it, yeah.
And what was interesting was, I think I asked if this is common, and I guess it happens in, you're setting your budget, it's getting approved at your town meeting, and then. So it happens everywhere.
Well, there've been several articles in the paper lately about special ed costs,
yeah,
issues.
Globe had one on Sunday.
Yeah, that's right, I saved it, yeah.
Where
Okay.
did these teachers that go on strike think they're gonna get the money after the budget's been set?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that our town negotiates those contracts on a regular routine basis. So we don't have that kind of a situation.
That was
here.
one of the things that we talked about at that meeting, was the fact that they are aware and they're making everything very, very competitive within Nauset to ensure that we don't run into the problems that they're having in Gloucester and other towns. So,
Yeah. Okay, I did ask Paul to work on our annual report for the report that comes out in I guess in January or February for the town.
Okay.
Would you be able to put something together for us to look at, for our next meeting our next meeting is December 19th. It's at 4 o'clock. It's a Thursday. And if you could just put something together for us to review, for that, meeting, I'd greatly appreciate it. Is there anything else that anybody'd like to bring up? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Roy? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Fred? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 0. It is
Like you said.
just about 6 o'clock, but not quite.